Hi, this is Grandma, and I'm reading The Iron Ring by Lloyd Alexander. And we're going to be reading chapter 22, Kieran and Skanda. We were just introduced to Kieran and Skanda at the end of chapter 21. They came riding up at the retreat. Ashwara spoke to us of your journey, Scanda said. Now you'll recall Ashwara is the king, or supposed to be the king of Ranapura, but his cousin has taken over and actually has tried to kill Ashwara and his brothers. You'll not be much off your path. Chandragar is by the Sabla River, the course you should follow in any case. Did he say no more? Tamar asked. Why does he wish me to go there? He told us a little, replied Kirin. His thoughts are his own, and it is best that he himself explain them. Ashwara is my friend, Tamar said. For the sake of friendship, I will do as he bids me. So Kieran and Skanda are Ashwara's brothers, and they have told Tamar that he needs to go to Chandragar, which is another kingdom. Miri glanced uneasily at Tamar, but said nothing against his decision and set about packing her saddlebags. For Hashkat and Adikabi, there was no question. They would ride to Chandragar, and Akka insisted on doing likewise. Rajaswami accepted the plan with resignation. Garuda took no pains to hide his own opinion. Shma, I thought we'd seen the last of that lion-headed, big-toothed forest lurker. Now he's pounced on us again, just when I was getting a little of my strength back. Shma, some people have no consideration. Tamar again urged the brothers to come inside, whispering that Jambavan was more learned than most Brahmanas, but not one to be lightly crossed. So in spite of the delay, Skanda and Kirin accepted the refreshments the bear set out for them. When they could stay no longer, Jambavan ransacked his larder for provisions enough to fill all their saddle packs. He embraced his parting visitors and waved a paw at Garuda. Your ashrama suits me better than my own palace, Tamar said. I'll remember it dearly and its hermit. Remember as well, said Jambavan, to look for truth behind truth. I hope I know it when I see it, Tamar said. Honored colleague, said Rajaswami as the bear hugged him, enough to make the Acharya's bones crack. I am confident that karma one day will lead our paths to cross. We still have an infinity of theories to discuss. Well, whatever shape infinity may be, replied the bear, it offers not enough time for your edifying discourses. Nor for your own. Rajaswami dabbed an eye with his scarf. Regaining his usual cheerfulness, he added, we must, however, look at the bright side. Friends who part in deep sadness meet again in greatest gladness. Tamar rode out from the ashrama as if leaving home for the second time. They adored their brother. Tamar understood that from the moment they set off for Chandragar. As they made their way up toward the Sabla, Kirin and Skanda talked of little else. Skanda's boyish features lit up whenever he spoke of Ashwara. Of the two, he was more eager, bright-faced, and high-spirited, laughing easily, shrugging off the dangers of hardships that had suffered as hunted fugitives. Kirin the more intense, with lightning flashes in his eyes when he recalled Nahusha's treachery and the blazing trap set for them. Skanda told happily of his boyhood, of Ashwara teaching him swordplay and archery. Kirin of Ashwara's nobility and wisdom as king of Ranapura. Yet for all their differences in temperament, they worshipped him equally. He saved our lives twice, Scanda said, when Tamar asked to know more of their escape from the pleasure cottage where Nahusha was sure they would burn to death. First, when Kana set the torch to the oil-soaked timbers, we had been warned by the loyal retainer, but almost too late, for the door had been bolted from the outside. Ashwara, even with flames bursting all around us, made us wait calmly until one of the walls had nearly burned away. Then, by sheer strength, he broke a passage through it. Kirin and I were choking and blinded by the smoke. Ashwara dragged both of us to open air and hid us amidst the foliage. The second time, Kirin added, was when we sought a way of eluding Nahusha's warriors, knowing we still lived. Nahusha set his men on watch to slay us before we could escape into the forest. Had they caught us, they'd have killed us out of hand, put in Scanda, but Ashwara struck on a bold plan. He disguised the three of us as holy beggars. Not difficult. We were already half naked. We streaked our faces with ashes and covered our heads in rags and trudged barefoot from Ranapura. None hindered us. Such saintly wanderers were a common sight. They deserved reverence and their persons were inviolate. And so we made our way quietly, almost to the edge of the forest, Kirin said. But there in our path stood a handful of warriors on the alert, casting hard eyes on all who passed. We could not turn aside, for they had already seen us. To flee, that surely would have betrayed us. To fight, we were weaponless and outnumbered. And so Ashwara whispered to us to keep on our way and be silent. Indeed, as we came up to the warriors, they looked at us not with suspicion, but with scorn. To their discredit, they showed neither respect nor reverence, and had only mocking laughter and coarse words for our tattered garments and humble bearing. Ashwara made no reply to their taunting, Skanda said, but I can tell you my blood was boiling. Ashwara had warned us not to speak, but I could scarcely hold my tongue. It was all I could do to keep from cursing them and throwing myself at their throats, because, you see, we knew these men and had trusted them. Now they were among the ones Nahusha had corrupted to turn against us. Standing there was a warrior named Rasha, who had been one of Ashwara's own troop captains. Instead of trying to pass by, Ashwara went up to them, head bowed, eyes to the ground. He held out his hands and begged for alms. What must it have cost his warrior's pride? Skanda shook his head, abasing himself to those traitors. I couldn't have forced myself to do it. He had to, Kirin explained. Otherwise, a beggar who doesn't beg? It would surely have roused their suspicion. That was our most dangerous moment. No man has ever judged me coward, but I confess my heart was in my mouth. It raced through my mind that if recognized, we could only sell our lives dearly. Rasha barely gave us a glance, but reproached his comrades for mocking us. Then he reached into his purse and took out a coin. One of the fellows burst out laughing. The smallest coin of the realm! Ha 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 ha! Are you sure you can spare it? Rasha only shrugged and threw it to the ground. Ashwara, ever silent, bent and picked it up from the desk and bowed his head in gratitude. The warriors motioned for us to be gone, and we passed by. As we did, Ashwara said under his breath, "Oh, Rasha, you betrayed me. Even so, for the sake of the coin you flung me, when I come into my kingdom, I vow to spare your life." Okay, next is chapter 23, At the Gates of Ranapura. A few days later, they reached the woodlands at the outskirts of Chandragarh. Gayatri, the horse, suddenly reared. As if out of thin air, two warriors sprang across their path, bows drawn. Recognizing the brothers who spoke briefly to them, the sentries saluted Tamar and waved him on with Miri and the others trotting after. Only little by little, as he glanced around, did Tamar notice chariots hidden by foliage, stacks of weapons and gear set amid the brush, so as to be nearly invisible. Warriors sat in the shadows along the forest track, sharpening swords and knives, waxing bowstrings, trimming the feathers of arrows. When Tamar spoke admiringly of how clever the camp had been disposed and how Darshan himself would have been impressed, Adhikavi nodded agreement, then sniffed the air and grimaced. "Better than any I've seen," remarked the Sutta. "It's the smell I don't like. Trouble. Something's bloody in the wind." A little farther on, Ashwara awaited them. No tent had been pitched, only a sort of lean-to covered with branches. Ashwara went to embrace them as they dismounted. His lion eyes brightened with pleasure. "I see you have gained another companion." He nodded his tawny head at Akka. "I wish to hear how you rescued him." "First, I thank you for turning from your journey. You will not be long delayed. To speak straight out, my brothers and I have done well, but not quite as well as I hoped," Ashwara said, beckoning all to sit around him in the shelter. "The king of Chandragar supports my cause with troops and equipment. Scanda and Kirin have convinced other small kings to join us. Since Bala chose to take neither side, as you remember, my forces nearly equal Nahusha's. Some you see here," he gestured toward the warriors scattered through the woods. "Still more are gathering close to Ranapura." "Then you have enough strength to challenge Nahusha and defeat him?" Tamar said. "I could not wish better news." "I said my forces were nearly equal," Ashwara replied, "which means they are not sufficient. Until they are, it would be rash to challenge him. My strength here is at its limit. I must seek more elsewhere. With added troops, my plan will be set, the last gap filled. Without them, if I am forced to give battle, I risk losing all. In either case, this is my only chance. This is my karma. Opportunity will not be given again." "I do not speak to you now as friend to friend," Ashwara continued, "but as king to king. I ask you one question. Will Sundari join me and give the troops I need?" "And I, no king, speak to you as friend to friend," Tamar answered. "Before Dala's Dorbar, I told you my commander, Darshan, would put Sundari's army at your orders if I wished him to do so. That was my pledge then and my pledge now." "My question is answered," said Ashwara, as Tamar listened closely. Ashwara detailed his need for light cavalry, foot soldiers, archers, spearmen, and warriors skilled in fighting from chariots. They would, he explained, be his strong reserves, joining his own people only out of necessity. If all goes as I intend, they will not be ordered into the fray, but I must have them armed and ready. In the heat of battle, even the best laid plans go adrift. Sundari's warriors will be my firm anchor. Without them, the tide may turn either way. "Let them come in haste," Ashwara went on. "They should follow the Rana River. The valley lands are gentle. Your troops can move swiftly through them and join Scanda in the plains east of Ranapura. He will see to their deployment and report their arrival to me. I will write that order in my own hand to Darshan. He will recognize that it comes from me," Tamar replied. "Choose your fastest galloper to carry it." "The time it takes a horseman to read Sundari is empty time," put in Miri. "Days spent in his travel added to days for the army to reach you." "You calculate as shrewdly as a moneylender or a general," Ashwara said fondly. But, clever Gopi, you tell me nothing I do not know. I am a miser of time. I hoard it and begrudge every wasted moment, yet I spend it as I must. If you're a miser, Mary replied, you'd rather save it, wouldn't you? You can send your message a dozen days faster. Ashwara laughed. What do you propose? Have you some magical chariot the old tales tell? No, Mary said. We have an eagle. All eyes turned on Garuda, who had come to roost in the lean-to. The bird gaped in horrid disbelief, then burst out, Wah! Don't look at me! I have my own troubles. Me? Go sailing across the country? I'm surely not such a fool. You're an eagle, nevertheless, Mary said. You're stronger now than you were nesting in that thorn bush. Your tail feathers are growing back beautifully. You really think so? Garuda said with a melting glance at Mary, and then hurriedly added, No, stronger's got nothing to do with it. My nerves are unraveled. My head's addled as a year-old egg. Shma, you're all quick at finding ways to unsettle me. Oh, you did bravely at Narusha's camp, Mary reminded him. A mistake, Garuda snapped. I've regretted it ever since. No, you didn't, Mary said. You were proud of yourself. I was proud of you, too. Oh, that was different. From here to Sundari and back alone. Oh, the empty sky, the cold, the wind, the silence, not a word of cheer. You've no idea how that can tie knots in a bird's mind. Garuda rolled his eyes. No, oh no, wheedle, I'm not up to it. You won't be by yourself. Akka suddenly broke in. I'll go with you. Eh? You would? You carry me on your back, Akka pressed, the way we flew around the ashrama. We had grand times, didn't we? Shma, we might have. Garuda hunched his wings. So, all right. There was that odd moment of pleasure, enjoyment. He clacked his beak thoughtfully. That would put a different light on the matter. You'll let me, won't you? Akka turned an eager face to Hashkat. You know it's important. Fun, besides. Hashkat said, We didn't save you so you could go careening through the air on a flying dust mop. On the other hand, what I let or don't let hasn't much weight with the Bandarloka. I won't call it a good idea. But it's not a completely bad idea. Very well, go with the old buzzard. Have a care. You'll be looking out for him as well as yourself. While Akka capered gleefully, Garuda flew to Muri's lap, bent his head to be scratched. Tamar said to Ashwara, I'll write the order to Darshan and, to be doubly sure, another for our horsemen to carry. Garuda can leave as soon as I'm done. It's nearly sundown, squawked Garuda. I'm an eagle. Shma, you think I'm an owl? Mary urged him to make the most of what light remained. Garuda finally muttered agreement. Tamar, finishing his message, rolled up the page and tied it securely to Garuda's leg. Rajaswami came to beam his blessings, while Mary, for the last time, stroked the bird's wings. If I were smaller and lighter, said Adhikavi, clapping a hand on Akka's shoulder, I'd be curious to take an air voyage. That's one of the few things I haven't done. Something I want to tell you, Garuda said to Tamar, as the monkey climbed astride the bird's back. You keep this in mind. I know, Tamar grinned. I owe you. All watched as Garuda and his passenger took flight, soaring above the treetops into the crimson streaks of sunset. That night there was no sound of Garuda singing himself to sleep. Ashwara next morning ordered his warriors to break camp and take up positions closer to Ranapura, thus be battle ready as soon as Tamar's troops arrived. Tamar ventured to ask the reason for Ashwara's decision. "You're well hidden here," he said. "Will you risk letting Nahusha's scouts see your people on the march and yourself as well?" "Ah, Nahusha knows exactly where I am," said Ashwara. "I am safer now than I have been. He will wait until he and I come face to face. Kill me? He will prefer to take me alive." "And you," Ashwara went on, "I thank you and wish you well. Your eagle will find you easily before you have gone far." "Gone far? How so?" Tamar said. "I stay and await my troops. Do you think otherwise? If I order my warriors into harm's way, how can I not be with them?" "There's no need," said Ashwara. "There is every need," replied Tamar. "I abandoned my people once. I will not do it again when they are in danger. I start for Mahapura when your cause is won, not before." Ashwara glanced around at Miri and the others. "Leave us. The king of Sundari and I have hard truths to speak." "There are no truths that cannot be spoken in front of us all." Tamar took Miri's hand. "Say what you wish." "Then understand this," Ashwara began. "It is agreed. I do not commit your troops to battle unless I have no other choice. But if I must, I will not hesitate, cost what it may." "Well, yeah, as you have said, in any event, I lead my own men. This is it as it should be." "Is it?" returned Ashwara. "Tell me one thing. How often have you commanded warriors in battle?" "Never." Tamar flushed. "Why ask? Do you question my courage to do so?" "No, I question your knowledge. I will not have officers around me who are untried and unseasoned. The stakes are too high, the danger too great, for me and for you." "I question your opinion of me, but not my duty to my people. I lead them. It's my right, my obligation as a Kshatriya. You will not deny me." The two men had been standing face to face. Tamar's blood ran hot and cold. He could not believe he had dared to gainsay Ashwara as a military commander or to show anger to him as a friend. For an instant he half expected the lion-eyed warrior to draw a sword and challenge him. His hands trembled, his gaze did not waver. Ashwara's golden features hardened. He said nothing for many moments. When he answered, his voice was icy. "Lead your troops, King of Sundari, as you demand, only hear me well. You will command them, but you will obey my orders, precisely, to the letter. No question, no complaint. You have spoken, I have spoken, so be it." Ashwara turned on his heel and strode to the horse lines, calling for Kieran and Skanda. "What have you done?" Mary rounded on Tamar. "You made him go against his better judgment." "And what of my own judgment? This is a matter between warriors. It's settled now." He saw little of Ashwara in the following days as the column of foot troops and chariots moved closer to Ranapura. Ashwara was busy with 100 things and seemed to be in 100 places at once. When they did meet, Tamar was not sure if he sensed a deep sadness or a cold formality, or if Ashwara was simply preoccupied. Miri said nothing more on the subject, which made it worse. He could not understand why it gnawed at him. He had acted properly according to Dharma. His right, his obligation, as he had told Ashwara. If he had done right, why did it feel wrong? He finally reasoned it out. If Ashwara mistrusted his skill, the tawny-haired warrior might hold back Sundari's troops even when they were needed. A fatal error that might well cost Ashwara the battle. After another sleepless night, Tamar sought him out. With Kirin beside him, Ashwara was tracing lines in the ground, marking positions his army would take up. Tamar began by talking about something else. When Akka was in Nahusha's chambers, he heard there was a plan of some sort. That's all he knows, but Nahusha must be sure of the scheme. So he wasn't troubled when Bala wouldn't join him. Yet Miri thinks he doesn't have that many troops if he had to ask Bala's help in the first place. She may be right, Ashwara said. I must try to learn more of Nahusha's plan. Is that all you came to tell me? No, my troops. Tamar hesitated. His words were sticking in his throat. What about them? When they're here, Tamar began again. He looked away for a moment. Ashwara awaited in silence. It's for the best, Tamar went on painfully, if I don't command them. Darshan will. As you choose, Ashwara said quietly. He nodded. A wise decision. Later, Tamar went back to the shelter. Mary was relieved when he told her what he had done. He did not tell her his shame at judging himself unworthy. He did not tell her that he had just given up his pride as a king and his honor as a kshatriya, and he had nothing left. Ashwara had attached Tamar to his personal staff, giving him a chariot and a promise that he might command a small detachment. Tamar made himself satisfied with that. But there was no sign of Garuda and Akka. Ashwara's columns had by now reached the edge of the woods, halting at the open ground before Ranapura. The 8-sided fortress, with massive walls of golden brown stone, overlooked a rolling plain dotted with copses of slender trees, and here and there a rocky knoll. Tall watchtowers rose at each angle of the fortress. Tamar could clearly see the lookouts and the turrets. Beyond Ranapura, jagged white peaks of the snow mountains soared into the clouds. Tamar constantly scanned the sweep of sky for a glimpse of a winged shape. None. Even by generous reckoning, Garuda should have found the camp days ago. Neither the bird nor Akka could have failed to notice the massing of warriors, ranks of chariots, horse lines, and stacks of provisions. Ashwara made no attempt at concealment. He allowed tents to be pitched, cook fires lit. Nahusha had chosen to set his battle lines well in front of the fortress. Warriors moved unhurried among the pavilions. Tamar did not see Nahusha, but once caught sight of Kana strolling with a group of officers. It all seemed very leisurely. If you'll remember, Kana is Nahusha's kinsman, the one that we first became acquainted with that got into it with Tamar. At dusk, Tamar went to his tent. Ashwara had assigned them each tents. Rajaswami sat cross-legged, deep in contemplation by the light of an oil lamp. Hashkat sorted out harness leathers, for the monkey had insisted on being Tamar's chariot driver. Adhikavi and Miri were setting out food. Seeing Tamar's worried frown, the Sutta laid a hand on his arm. Put your mind at rest. They'll be here, and your troops soon after. Nothing will happen meantime. Ashwara won't issue his challenge until your people are well in position. Nahusha won't fight until he's formally challenged. You're a king. You know how these things are done. I don't, said Miri. Ashwara's here, armed to the teeth. Nahusha sees him. What more challenge? Formalities, Adhikavi said. Above all, the formalities must be properly observed. What will happen when Ashwar is ready is that he and his brothers will ride up to Nahusha's lines with a flag of truce. Ashwar will declare his grievances and why he intends to fight. He demands Nahusha's surrender. Nahusha won't do it, of course. They'll trade some elegantly polished insults. Each will declare right and justice on their side. Ashwar will ride back, and so it begins. Every game has its rules, Adhikavi continued. This is a game for Kshatriyas. There are rules about surrendering, carrying away the wounded, breaking off a combat. Oh, it's all neatly planned. Naturally, there's always some hot-headed, battle-mad fool who goes rampaging. It's contagious. His comrades join in, rules to the wind, then it's butchery. Plain and simple. Kill, kill, no matter how. They call it Sankula. Adhikavi grimaced. Sankula. Bloody lunacy as I see it. How do you know all of this? Mary asked. You're a Sutta. You're forbidden to fight. True, Adhikavi said. Suttas don't bear arms, but I still had to learn. As a royal crier, my duty was to be with my king, and when the battle ended, make a show of praising his great valor and dauntless courage. I can tell you, though, when you see a king in full regalia leaning over his chariot to puke out his poor, terrified guts, praising his valor takes a certain amount of inventiveness. At sundown, they leave off slaughtering each other. The warriors go back to their tents, eat, drink, tell dazzling lies about their heroic deeds. No one fights at night. You see, that's one rule never broken. Unthinkable. Simply not done. At dawn, they go at it again. Rules, sweet guppy, said Adhikavi. Absolutely necessary when disemboweling your enemies. Otherwise, we'd be no better than barbarians. Late morning the next day, Nahusha attacked. Doesn't sound like Nahusha waited for all the ceremonies, the traditions that are supposed to go before a battle. But we'll find out the next time. Okay, bye-bye.